Most people think Denmark is the happiest place on earth, but have you ever heard of a small place called Bhutan? It's the size of Indiana with the population of Alaska, and it's just tucked in the Himalayan mountains. And it's really considered the happiest country in the world, and due to the fact that it's the last standing Buddhist kingdom. One of the main reasons that Bhutan is one of the happiest places in the world is because they avoided globalization and they stayed isolated from the world. But now, for the past 10 years, they've started to introduce the country into globalization with technology, but have still remained very close to their culture, which is Buddhism.
The USA is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It has the 8th highest GDP per capita in the Happy Planet Index. Its economy is based on fossil fuel, trade, and the second largest manufacturing industry in the world. One would think that because of its economic status, it would probably have one of the highest happiness indexes in the world too. We're going to take a look more into this in this video.
I'm from Bhutan, and here in Bhutan we preserve our traditions and we truly focus on caring about our environment. Since we're so isolated, we can truly protect our environment and our culture and not let globalization affect our happiness. Here, when certain foreigners come into our country each year, they have to pay $200 a day. In this way, this helps our economy and keeps us happy and open-minded. Most people think Denmark is the happiest place on earth simply because they're a very developed country. But since we're very underdeveloped, it still doesn't mean that we can't be happy. Here in Bhutan, we live on an average $1.25 a day. And that really gives us everything that we need, yet we still remain happy. So it truly doesn't base on what we have, it's what we have on the inside.
I'm from America. I feel like all my needs are satisfied. If I want to go shopping, I can go shopping. If I want to go to a restaurant, I'll go to a restaurant. The average American spends $91 a day. I feel like I spend more than this. With $1.25, I can buy myself a coffee, and that's about it. There's nothing else really I can do, and I feel like with $1.75, I would be truly, truly unhappy.
Have you ever heard of the GNH index? It's not another boring economic term. It actually stands for Gross National Happiness Index. And here in Bhutan, we're the only country in the world that bases our happiness on that. And that's how we're constantly focusing on not letting globalization affect our happiness and constantly focus on our environment and our culture. And through this, we can make sure every person in our country is as happy as they can be, even though we only live on $1.25 a day. Since 1971, our country has rejected GDP as the only way to measure our progress. Since we're above poverty line, we don't only measure our happiness and our country's growth on GDP. We measure it through the gross national happiness. And in our country, when travelers come to visit, we have the 4 pillars of gross national happiness. For example, we have quotes saying, "Life is a journey, complete it." Also, let nature be your guide, considering that we're so environmentally friendly and we truly focus on not just what you have, but what you can offer to our country and what the environment has to offer for you. Since our gross national happiness index is so effective, the UN is now considering ways that our index model can be replicated across the globe. Over the last 20 years, Bhutan has doubled its life expectancy, enrolled almost 100% of its children in primary school, and overhauled its infrastructure.
In 2009, it was reported that 60% of Americans are living in unhealthy, unsafe levels of pollution. And in June 2016 to July 2016, Americans went from 29% satisfied with the US to just 17%. We care more about money and providing for our families and little time worrying about the environment, charities, and helping others. Crime in America is high, and it has only been rising in the past years. Per 10,000 people in America, in 2014, it was reported that there were 372 violent crimes. In Bhutan, people trust each other. Kids are allowed to run on the streets by themselves, and in America, parents would rarely let their children by themselves or out of their sight. If happiness were directly related to GDP, then surely the happiest countries in the world would be the richest. Denmark and Switzerland would be at the top, and the poorest countries, such as Afghanistan and Syria, would be at the bottom.
Not only does Bhutan preserve its cultural values, but it truly is one of the most stable ecosystems in the world. And with the isolation that it has, it's able to really preserve its truly beautiful environment. And with that, GDP can't measure that. Only what we have to offer, which is our GNH, which is a gross national happiness. And with a good environment and our strong culture, we're able to have both of those things.
Whilst we do not believe that happiness is directly related to GDP, to a certain extent it must be. We cannot be happy unless our basic needs are fulfilled, and for that reason, Afghanistan and Syria are the lowest on the Global Happiness Index, because they do not have food, water, or healthy living conditions.
I'll cut it off. Based on comparing the US and Bhutan, we can conclude that GDP is not the only factor that depends on happiness.